What's next? I don't know.
Is that Darth Vader?
No, that is the Wall Street Bull. We're facing some pretty potent swans. We're losing every major ecosystem on the planet. We live in a global climate crisis, economic instability, volatile energy prices, China and India in the world market for essentially everything. Water is going to be the real challenge. Food. We've had food riots on 3 continents linked to climate and water and then what I call the sustainability imperative, and when I'm done you can tell me if this is good news or not, but collectively these forces and others, what Royal Dutch Shell calls drivers of change, when they set out to try to understand how to make business decisions in an inherently uncertain world, they look for these drivers of change. You don't get a choice about these. These are coming at you. Your choice is how you respond. We know what unsustainability looks like. Droughts, the loss of glaciers world round, oiled birds, oiled wetlands, the Russian fires, the Pakistani floods, the Indian floods. Climate change is very much for real. Despite some transposed numbers, the glaciers in the Himalaya are melting. Many of them are gone. Australia, the Murray-Darling River Basin, used to run bank-to-bank water. It's now dry much of the time. As a result, 2 years ago, the second largest rice mill in Southeast Asia shut down because they no longer grow rice there. That's what triggered the food riots. Australia, when the dust storms swept out of the dead red center, the dust storms that come out of China each year. Much of the air pollution in this part of the world actually comes from there. Many people on the planet don't have clean water. Sometimes you have too much water. The floods in China in '98 displaced more people than there were in this country at that time, forced China into a $12 billion reforestation program because they had cut the headwaters of the Yangtze, thinking that the forests there were extractable board feet of timber, not watershed. Again, all of these systems go together. Here in California, frankly, my first thought driving up to this beautiful place is, yeehaw, this is a fire trap. And the rains of yesterday were very welcome. Steve Chu, the Secretary of Energy, says he doesn't understand how California's agriculture will continue. It is the salad bowl of the country, and he said he doesn't quite understand how the cities are going to get along either. These droughts, climate change impacting food, much of the world is now at risk of that. Oh, and then there are these little instabilities. For years, the International Energy Agency has been saying that the world's awash in oil. Don't worry about stuff like peak oil. It's just silly. Until in 2007, there was a little report out of the IEA, not noticed at all in this country. I don't think it was reported in this country, that because of a few little instabilities in the Middle East, we might expect some constraints on the supply of oil. Last fall, about a year ago, a couple guys had an article in the UK Guardian saying the IEA has been cooking its books to pleasure the past American administration, and so as not to cause world panic, they have misled the world as to how much oil there really is. There's actually a lot less of it. The British government said, say what? We base our national projections on IEA numbers. Where did those numbers come from? A man named Fatih Birol, the chief economist of the IEA, said, well, they're assumptions. But don't worry, we'll do a real study. The study issued in December saying that within 3 to 4 years expect a plateauing of oil and then a steady decline. This is not good news for oil-using countries. The Brits commissioned an industry task force chaired by the managing director of Royal Dutch Shell, which report issued this March, calling for an immediate transition to green transport. So this is one of those drivers of change within 3 to 4 years. The IEA is now saying peak oil 2020. I hope they're right. Nature creates conditions conducive to life, in Janine Benyus's words. Here's what we're doing. These are the synthetic compounds now found in mother's milk. And for those of you who are fans of breastfeeding, all other forms of milk, aldehydes, ketones, phenols, furfural. People, what are we doing to ourselves? It's worth answering that question. Nature runs a rigorous testing laboratory in which products that don't work get recalled by the manufacturer. This is a cautionary tale for a young species like ours. So we asked nature, what do you think? How are we doing? My friend Bill Becker, who runs the Presidential Climate Action Project, project of natural capitalism, said if we're going to insist on ruining the planet, we're going to have to stop claiming we're a superior species. And of course, Ray Anderson said, what's the business case for ending life on Earth? Dana was the first person to use the word sustainability in the English language. It appeared in Limits to Growth. She didn't much try to define it in Limits, but then went on throughout her lifetime to talk about what it means. Limits, as you know, was much attacked and was wrong. If you read the projections in the original 72 Limits to Growth, we've long, just as Dana and I talked in 1995, we don't much see how the system will go on. The system went on. Limits is wrong, yeah? Even the Wall Street Journal admitted. And this is 6 months prior to the '08 collapse. Because commodity prices were reaching an all-time high, which, if you follow the commodity markets right now, they are starting to do again. Oil hit $5 a gallon out here in California. Limits wasn't wrong, but people paid attention. They listened. 9 million people at least read that book. Over 9 million sold. I've never written a book anywhere near that. People listened, people acted, and that pushed off what they'd predicted. But it's all still there, as you know, as are many of Dana's, I think, more important questions of what is it we really want? We focus so much on what we don't want. But what is it that we do want? And Dana said someday when everyone understands that nearly all of us truly want the same kind of world, it will take surprisingly little time or effort to have it. That, I think, is the real opportunity of sustainability. You can argue about the science. Sure, science is uncertain. That's what scientists do. They argue. Here's the science on climate change that I like. And it doesn't matter. Now, I say this with all deference to the great climate scientists who are spending their lives trying to make the science catch up to the observed reality, because at the moment, reality's outrunning the models. But let's assume the skeptics are right. Climate change is a hoax. Now, frankly, don't go to Vegas on the odds of that being correct. But if all you care about is being a profit-maximizing capitalist, you'd do exactly the same thing you'd do if you were scared to death about climate change, because we know how to solve this problem at a profit. And the smart companies are doing it. Some 10 years ago, DuPont announced they were going to cut their emissions of greenhouse gases 65% below their 1990 levels by 2010. This is a bit more ambitious than our national government continues to say we could not possibly achieve without bankrupting our economy. Has DuPont joined Greenpeace? They made this announcement in the name of increasing shareholder value. They've done rather well. Emissions are down 80% for a savings between 2000 and 2005 of $3 billion. Andrew Winston, author of Green to Gold, points out that they're saving $2.2 billion a year. For a number of years, that was the same as their profitability. Here's a company that's profitable because it's behaving more responsibly. They're not the edge of the envelope. ST Micro may be. In the same time frame, they pledged zero net CO2 emissions with a 40-fold increase in production. When they made this pledge, their CEO, Pasquale Pastorio, said, "I have no earthly idea how to achieve it." Figuring it out drove their corporate innovation, taking them from the number 12 chip maker in the world to the number 6. They are winning awards. They reckon by the time they're done, they'll have saved about $1 billion. My team at Natural Capitalism walked into a company that had 6,300 computers and monitors that they leave on 24/7 because of some urban myths. Shortens the life of the computer to turn it off, turn it on. No. IT needs it left on. No, one night a week would do fine. In that company, just publishing a policy, turn the darn things off when you're not sitting in front of them, would save them $700,000. Nationally, we waste $2.8 billion buying and burning energy to run computers that have nobody sitting in front of them. This is pure waste. Now, the economists amongst us would say this isn't possible, the market is perfect, if these savings existed, they would have been captured, this is a real story. We walked into another company, big distribution center, 7 million square foot warehouse, floor-to-ceiling boxes with 500-watt light bulbs shining on the tops of boxes. The guys down below had task lighting so they could see where they were going. We said, "Y'all have a switch?" $650,000. Company after company after company. Cut your waste, drive your profits. And it shouldn't surprise us that our Asian and European competitors use half the energy to produce a unit of GNP that we do, even assuming you care about GNP. This is a competitiveness issue. Same is true of small business. Small business is the economic engine the world around. In this country, it's half the non-farm economy, 90% of the non-governmental employers, and they have exactly the same opportunities. A real estate office down in Florida employed some rocket science. They hauled out a caulk gun. Saved themselves $7,900 a year. We've put together a tool that small businesses can use called Solutions at the Speed of Business. It's a web-based learning tool that takes all the content that my team has that we normally sell to big companies for a very high price point and embeds it in a tool so that small businesses can access it and implement it. And it walks you step by step by step through how to cut your waste in ways that enhance your profitability. Extrapolate this out to a community. Typical community is bleeding to death, buying energy from outside. 20% of gross income goes for this, 80% of those dollars leave town. This is reverse economic development. You're bleeding to death. Or we're like somebody that wants to take a bath and the water keeps running out, so people are trying to sell us bigger water heaters, whether they be a nuclear one or a coal plant. We don't need a bigger water heater, we need a plug. This man invented one. His name is Wes Birdsall. He was the general manager of the Osage, Iowa Municipal Utility. Now, Osage, Iowa is hardly the hotbed of industrial innovation in the United States, but he did an interesting thing as a business leader. He stepped across the meter to his customer's side to say, "I'm going to help you use less of my product." Why would he do that? Because he realized you don't want kilowatt hours of electricity, which is what most utilities think they're in the business of making and selling.